In a world that never stops talking, silence feels unnatural, even threatening. But to Niccolo Machiavelli, one of history's sharpest minds on power and leadership, silence wasn't a void to be filled. It was a weapon to be mastered. In a culture where everyone rushes to post, tweet, defend, explain, or react, the one who chooses silence commands a different kind of power, the kind that comes from restraint, mystery, and control. Silence is not weakness. It is strength wrapped in stillness. Because when you choose not to speak, you are not surrendering. You are protecting your position. You're forcing others to reveal more than they planned while you remain unreadable. Most people talk because they're uncomfortable with uncertainty. They need to be understood, validated, or heard. But the powerful man knows something deeper. The moment you speak, you begin to leak power. You reveal your mindset, your strategy, your emotions. And once exposed, you become easier to manipulate. Silence, on the other hand, keeps your opponents guessing. It creates space for you to observe, calculate, and wait. And in that space, you gain the upper hand. Machiavelli understood this instinctively. He saw how words could be used against rulers, how noise revealed too much, and how silence kept power intact. To be silent is to withhold ammunition from those who seek to challenge you. It's refusing to give the world a map to your thoughts. In war, the general who speaks little is often the most dangerous. In business, the negotiator who pauses instead of replying too quickly forces the other side to flinch. In relationships, the one who doesn't beg for closure or over-explain commands respect. Silence is unsettling because it shifts control. The one who doesn't speak cannot be predicted, and the unpredictable are always feared. There is a reason. Ancient warriors, Stoic philosophers, and modern-day power players all value silence. It removes leverage from the hands of others and places it back into your own. When used with intention, silence becomes your strongest form of communication. You don't need to yell to be heard. You don't need to argue to prove you're right. Your calm, composed silence becomes louder than noise, more commanding than anger, more persuasive than explanation. Silence, Machiavelli teaches, is not the absence of action. It is the act of withholding power until the right moment. That moment, when it comes, is devastating. Because by then the silence has already spoken. Silence has a strange effect on the human mind. It's more than the absence of words. It's the presence of uncertainty. And nothing destabilizes people faster than not knowing what's coming next. Machiavelli understood this truth centuries ago. When people can't read you, they begin to fear you. That fear isn't always loud or dramatic. It sits beneath the surface like tension in the air before a storm. And this precisely is where silence holds its greatest psychological power. It allows you to step out of the emotional chaos others live in and become something else, an enigma. The unpredictable force in the room, the one no one can quite figure out. When you speak less, people start filling in the blanks. They imagine your thoughts. They project their fears. And often their imagination will paint a far more intimidating picture than anything you could have said yourself. We are wired to seek patterns, to anticipate behavior, to feel safe in certainty. So when you remove that certainty with silence, you introduce doubt, and doubt weakens people. A man who stays silent during conflict negotiation or even daily conversation becomes difficult to dominate. Why? Because the other person can't tell if he's angry, calm, thinking, or simply unaffected. That mystery breaks their rhythm. It pulls them out of their own sense of control. And suddenly they're reacting to you, chasing understanding, trying to regain footing they didn't even know they lost. Machiavelli saw this in politics and warfare, in courtrooms filled with scheming nobles. But it applies just as powerfully to the modern world. In business, a silent executive in a tense meeting commands more attention than a loud one. In dating, the man who doesn't rush to explain himself or seek approval stands out. And in personal conflict, silence can feel like rejection power or punishment, all depending on the mind of the other person. That's the key. Silence forces people to confront their own insecurities without giving them anything to fight back against. You hold power not because you dominate others, but because you deny them the comfort of understanding you. That's what makes silence so feared. And in that fear, you find control. People respect what they can't predict. They fear what they can't manipulate, and they follow what they don't fully understand. In this way, silence isn't just psychological, it's spiritual. It separates you from the emotional noise of the crowd. It elevates you, and sometimes it's the only voice that really gets heard. In Machiavelli's world and ours, perception is everything. Power doesn't come from truth. It comes from what people believe. You can be struggling behind closed doors, uncertain or overwhelmed. But if you project calm confidence and control, you hold the upper hand. This is the brutal brilliance behind Machiavelli's insight. People judge more by what they see than by what is real. And silence is the perfect illusion of control. A man who speaks little seems composed. A leader who doesn't flinch under pressure seems unbreakable. A person who doesn't rush to defend or explain themselves appears certain, even if they're battling storms inside. The appearance of strength often matters more than actual strength. Because people don't follow truth, they follow stability. And silence feels like stability. In a loud world, silence is power precisely because it's rare. People associate silence with confidence. Think about it: when someone remains calm in a heated argument, they immediately stand out. They seem disciplined, even intimidating. Why? Because most people are reactive. They speak without thinking, defend themselves at the first sign of criticism, and fall into emotional traps. But the person who resists that urge, who simply watches, listens, and holds their ground, becomes something different, something elevated. Their silence isn't just absence, it's presence. And that presence radiates composure, a kind of invisible armor. Machiavelli saw this firsthand in the courts and battlefields of Renaissance Italy, where appearances determined life or death. A prince who appeared weak would be overthrown even if he was in truth strong, but one who appeared strong even in chaos would survive. Because people are visual, they follow what they see. If you seem like you're in control, people hesitate to challenge you. If you act uncertain even when you're right, people start to doubt you. It's not fair, but it's real. And the wise accept it. This is why silence is so essential. It adds gravity to your presence. It signals that you're unbothered, above the noise, and fully in command of yourself. You might be figuring things out quietly, but to others, you look immovable. That's what keeps enemies cautious and allies loyal. People crave certainty, and silence can project it, especially when used intentionally. In this way, silence doesn't just protect your inner world. It builds a powerful outer image, one that speaks louder than words ever could. And in the realm of power, leadership and influence, how you appear often determines how you're treated. With silence, you choose how you're seen. And that choice can be the difference between respect and dismissal, between dominance and defeat. History remembers the loud speeches, the battlefield roars, and the public declarations, but the true masters of power were often the quietest men in the room. Machiavelli didn't just theorize about silence. He studied it in action, watching how leaders like Julius Caesar and Cesare Borgia used silence not as a retreat, but as a weapon, one sharper than any sword. These men didn't win through endless talking. They won through calculation, timing, and the ability to say nothing until the exact moment when saying something would break the world open. Their silence was never passive. It was strategic, terrifying, and utterly commanding. Julius Caesar, admired by Machiavelli for his ability to dominate both friends and enemies, often withheld his thoughts in critical moments. He let others speak, argue, and reveal their plans while he watched. He calculated. Then, when the time was right, he moved decisively. His famous phrase, "Veni vidi vici," "I came, I saw, I conquered," reflects more than just victory. It reflects the power of brevity, the art of letting action speak instead of noise. Caesar understood that a man who stays quiet builds suspense, and suspense, when paired with force, creates dominance. Cesare Borgia, another of Machiavelli's most admired figures, was even more dangerous in his silence. He was a man who didn't waste words. He let his enemies wonder, stew in uncertainty, and then struck when they least expected. His power didn't come from boasting or reassurance, it came from leaving people unsure of what he would do next. That unpredictability made him nearly untouchable for years. He understood that when people don't know your intentions, they become hesitant. And hesitation in power dynamics is fatal. These men weren't just leaders, they were performers on a brutal stage. Their silence made others speak, more reveal more, and overstep. It's a tactic that still works today. In business, the CEO who listens more than he talks often commands greater respect. In relationships, the man who doesn't rush to clarify or beg earns more value. In negotiations, silence creates pressure. It turns time into a weapon. Machiavelli wasn't celebrating quietness for its own sake. He was revealing a timeless truth. The most feared men in history were often the most disciplined with their words. Their silence wasn't emptiness, it was a calculated strategy to control the emotional and mental battlefield. When used correctly, silence doesn't just demand respect, it creates it. Because people don't forget the ones who kept them guessing. And they rarely challenge the one who never needed to raise his voice to be heard. In a world driven by impulses where every emotion demands a reaction and every opinion begs to be heard, restraint has become a forgotten art. But for Machiavelli, restraint was everything. The ability to stay silent, especially when provoked, was not weakness. It was self-mastery in its purest form. He believed that a ruler's greatest battle wasn't with his enemies, it was with his own impulses. To speak too quickly, to respond emotionally, or to react in anger was to surrender control. And once you lose control of yourself, you lose control of your power. Silence then becomes more than just a tactic. It becomes evidence of inner strength. Anyone can speak. Anyone can yell, argue, or defend themselves. But it takes a different level of discipline to hold back when your ego is bruised, when your pride is challenged, or when your emotions beg for release. That kind of silence isn't empty, it's loaded. It tells the world I am not ruled by chaos. I command myself. And in a culture obsessed with constant reaction, this calm silence becomes magnetic. People feel it. They sense that you're not easily moved, not easily shaken. And that presence alone earns respect. Machiavelli saw this quality as essential for anyone seeking influence. The fox, he wrote, must recognize traps. The lion must frighten wolves. But both must exercise restraint. Because recklessness, even if justified, invites ruin. When you react emotionally, you become predictable, and the predictable can be controlled. But when you choose silence, when you pause instead of pounce, you create an invisible wall, one that others can't see through. That wall is made of your discipline, and it's what protects your energy, your strategy, and your dignity. Think of the most commanding leaders in history. They didn't scream to be heard. They didn't argue to be respected. They mastered their words and, more importantly, their need to use them. They spoke only when it served a purpose. And when they did, every word landed like thunder. That's the effect of restraint. It sharpens your voice by using it less. It makes your presence stronger by relying on it more than your explanations. In personal life, too, this mastery matters. In conflict, the silent one keeps the high ground. In relationships, the man who can control his reactions builds trust. And within the person who can delay speech often finds clarity and peace. As Machiavelli teaches, the power you have over others starts with the power you have over yourself. And that power begins with silence. True leadership doesn't always come from the loudest voice in the room, it often radiates from the one who speaks the least. In Machiavelli's view, the most powerful leaders were those who didn't waste words because they understood something few ever learn. Authority isn't declared, it's projected. And silence is one of its most commanding signals. In moments of tension, conflict, or negotiation, a leader who remains calm and silent exerts a quiet dominance that can shift the entire atmosphere. The room adjusts to their energy. People watch more closely. They lean in, wondering what that leader is thinking, feeling, or planning. And in that space of uncertainty, power is born. Silence builds authority not by avoiding communication, but by making every word matter. The leader who withholds his reaction, who resists the urge to explain or defend, automatically elevates his position. Why? Because people interpret silence as confidence. It suggests that you don't feel the need to prove anything, that you don't rush to justify yourself because you're already secure in your stance. This impression, whether true or not, creates a ripple effect. People begin to measure their words more carefully around you. They respect your boundaries. They fear your stillness more than another's shouting. Machiavelli observed that in chaotic political environments, those who talked too much often lost their footing. Leaders who reacted emotionally or gave too much away verbally became predictable, and predictability invites challenge. But the leaders who mastered the art of listening, waiting, and choosing the right moment to speak were the ones who kept control. This isn't just a Renaissance strategy, it's a timeless one. In today's boardrooms, courtrooms, and even family dynamics, the one who speaks with deliberate precision tends to lead the conversation even when they say little. Silence gives leaders the most valuable tool of all leverage. It allows them to observe, read the room, and gather intelligence before making a move. It denies others the ability to manipulate or anticipate. In a world that rewards speed and reaction, the silent leader is the one who slows the game down, who forces others to respond to his pace, not the other way around. That's the hidden power behind Machiavellian silence. It commands without controlling it, intimidates without aggression, and it leads without needing permission. Authority isn't always about action, it's about presence. And a leader who can command attention without speaking is already several steps ahead. In silence, he doesn't just hold back words, he holds the room. And the room knows it. There is a desperate energy behind over-explaining a subtle plea that says, "Please understand me. Please don't misunderstand my intentions." But as Machiavelli understood all too well, this kind of vulnerability doesn't inspire respect, it invites doubt. The more you explain, the more cracks begin to show. The more you defend, the more others start to wonder if you're guilty of something. That's the paradox. People think that by saying more, they're protecting themselves. But in truth, they're giving away leverage. Every word becomes a thread that others can pull, unraveling your frame, your certainty, your power. Silence, on the other hand, is armor. It denies people access, and when timed well, it says more than an entire speech ever could. Machiavelli taught that appearances matter more than truth. People aren't listening for your full explanation, they're watching your confidence. And if your words are riddled with justification, nervous energy, or emotional overreach, you've already lost ground. The wise man speaks when it serves a purpose, not when his ego demands relief. This is what makes silence so dangerous to your enemies and so magnetic to others. When someone accuses you, mocks you, or tries to bait you and you respond with nothing, you don't appear weak. You appear unshakable. And that creates tension, uncertainty, even fear, because silence, when used strategically, flips the script. Now they're the ones who feel exposed. They're the ones left wondering what you're thinking, how much you know, or what you'll do next. Think about high-stakes negotiations or leadership under pressure. The man who pauses, who waits just a few seconds longer than expected before responding, shifts the dynamic entirely. Those few moments of silence create discomfort in the other party, enough to make them speak more, reveal more, or even concede. That's not coincidence. That's psychological control. And it only works when you've mastered the urge to fill every silence with explanation. In everyday life, this principle holds true. In arguments, over-explaining dilutes your message. In dating, explaining your worth cheapens it. In leadership, too many words weaken your command. People don't remember what you said nearly as much as how you made them feel. And silence, when used with precision, makes them feel your presence more than 1,000 words ever could. Machiavelli didn't just warn against reckless speech, he revealed a deeper truth. You are strongest when your words are chosen like weapons, not scattered like apologies. Speak with purpose, and when in doubt, say less. Because silence, when timed right, speaks the loudest. There's a special kind of power in being unreadable. When people can't predict your next move, they can't prepare for it. That's why strategic ambiguity, the art of revealing nothing while appearing calm and composed, is one of the most lethal tools in any power game. Machiavelli understood that in politics, warfare, and leadership, what people think you might do is often more powerful than what you actually do. And silence, when used intentionally, becomes the perfect cloak for that ambiguity. It keeps others guessing, doubting, second-guessing themselves. The moment you withhold your thoughts, your reactions, your intentions, you shift the balance of power. Now you're no longer reacting to the world. The world is reacting to you. Most people fear the unknown. Human beings crave clarity, resolution, something to grasp. So when you deny them that, when you don't explain, don't justify, don't overshare it, creates psychological tension. And people hate tension. They'll do anything to relieve it, even hand you their power just to get back some sense of control. In this way, your silence becomes more than a boundary, it becomes leverage. People project their own fears and insecurities into your silence. They assume you're smarter, stronger, more informed, or more dangerous than you may actually be. And that assumption alone can keep challengers at bay. This is not manipulation, it's strategy. And Machiavelli was clear: controlling perception is the key to controlling reality. Strategic ambiguity allows you to control the narrative without speaking a single word. You deny your rivals ammunition. You deny your critics a target. You deny your enemies clarity. While they scramble to understand you, you move freely, unseen and unchallenged. That's the gift of being underestimated or misread. It gives you freedom to act without interference. In relationships, this plays out powerfully. The person who doesn't constantly explain themselves or reveal every thought becomes more intriguing, more respected. In leadership, the boss who keeps his long-term vision quiet while observing the team gains more insight and reveals less vulnerability. And in negotiations, the silent participant holds all the cards because the unknown always demands more attention than the obvious. Machiavelli knew that speech reveals, silence conceals, and in concealment there is power. When no one is sure where you stand or what you'll do, they approach you more cautiously. They speak more carefully. They hesitate, and in hesitation, they lose advantage. This is why strategic ambiguity cloaked in silence isn't passivity, it's active, deliberate control. Because when people can't predict your next move, you control the board. Silence isn't just a tactic you use on others, it's a discipline you impose on yourself. In Machiavelli's philosophy, the most dangerous man is not the one who reacts with fire, but the one who remains calm when everything burns around him. Emotional control is the highest form of strength, and silence is its purest expression. In that pause between stimulus and response lies the entire battlefield of inner mastery. Most people lose that battle daily. They speak from anger, lash out from ego, or unravel under pressure. But the one who can sit in silence, who can feel the chaos rise inside and still say nothing, becomes untouchable. He doesn't just master his enemies, he masters himself. This form of silence isn't weakness or repression, it's restraint. It's choosing not to react, not because you don't feel, but because you know how to wait. You understand that reaction is surrender while silence is sovereignty. Machiavelli didn't believe in being cold for its own sake. He believed in being effective, and nothing is more effective than the man who cannot be baited, who cannot be emotionally hijacked, who controls the tempo of his own mind. That kind of man can't be manipulated because he doesn't play by anyone else's emotional script. Modern psychology supports this ancient wisdom. Emotional regulation, the ability to pause, reflect, and act with intention rather than impulse, is now known to be a cornerstone of mental toughness. And it begins always with silence. When you go silent in a moment of anger, you create space. In that space, you think. You see the game more clearly. You remember what's truly at stake. And most importantly, you choose your response, rather than letting it choose you. In relationships, this silence prevents arguments from escalating. In leadership, it earns respect. In personal development, it builds resilience. Because the silent man is not passive, he is poised. He's not disengaged, he's deliberate. His silence doesn't scream weakness. It radiates calm strength. He doesn't need to speak to prove his value. He doesn't need to fight every battle to win the war. And that's what makes him terrifying to those who thrive on chaos. He simply won't participate in it. Machiavelli knew that the path to power always runs through the mind, and the first gate you must guard is your mouth. The man who speaks only when it serves him, who pauses long enough to see clearly, is already halfway to victory. In a world ruled by noise, silence is not retreat. It's a sign you've taken control from the inside out. In today's hyper-connected world where every moment demands a reaction and every opinion feels like an obligation, silence has become a radical act. We live in a culture addicted to noise, social media posts, endless debates, forced transparency, performative vulnerability. Everyone is speaking, typing, shouting to be seen, to be heard, to be validated. But in the middle of that chaos, there's something deeply powerful about the man who says nothing. The one who doesn't rush to share, defend, or respond. The one who simply observes, calculates, and waits. That silence isn't indifference, it's rebellion. It's a refusal to be dragged into the emotional noise that weakens the minds of others. Machiavelli may have lived centuries ago, but his wisdom slices straight through the heart of modern distraction. Power belongs to the man who does not speak unless it serves him. Silence today is a form of spiritual clarity. It is self-respect. It is the rejection of the world's demand to always perform. When you go silent, you return to yourself. You create distance from the madness, and in that distance you reclaim your autonomy. You stop playing their game. You stop dancing for their approval. You stop leaking energy with every post, every argument, every need to explain yourself. And suddenly, your silence starts to mean something. People notice. They feel the absence. And they start to wonder what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you know that they don't. That's not weakness, that's command. Machiavelli didn't write about silence as avoidance. He wrote about it as positioning. Silence isn't about running away from confrontation, it's about rising above it. It's choosing to be strategic instead of impulsive, reflective instead of reactive. In this way, silence becomes a tool of transformation, not just outwardly, but inwardly. The more you practice it, the more you find clarity. You begin to hear your own voice again beneath the static of everyone else's expectations. You start to understand what actually matters. And from that place of stillness, you gain leverage. You become harder to provoke, harder to read, harder to control. In a world that values volume over virtue, silence is your rebellion. It's your armor against manipulation, distraction, and emotional fatigue. It's a statement that says, I don't owe you my energy, my thoughts, or my words unless I choose to give them. And that choice is everything. Because the moment your silence becomes intentional, it becomes powerful. And in that power, you don't just survive the noise, you rise above it. In a world that rewards noise, silence is your secret advantage. Most people talk to fill the void, seeking validation, approval, or simply to be noticed. But Machiavelli reminds us that the most powerful individuals are not those who speak the most, but those who know when to remain silent. Silence is not about being passive or avoiding conflict. It's about mastering your emotions, protecting your strategy, and controlling how you're perceived. The core lesson is simple yet profound. When you speak less, you give less away. You become harder to predict, harder to manipulate, and more respected. Whether in business negotiations, relationships, or leadership roles, learning to pause before reacting gives you power over your own behavior and over the dynamics around you. You stop reacting and you start commanding. In everyday life, this might mean resisting the urge to explain yourself when criticized. It could mean staying calm in a heated argument or choosing not to respond to provocation. That silence, though uncomfortable, often shifts the balance in your favor. People notice it. They feel the restraint. And in that stillness, they assign meaning, strength, confidence, mystery. The world will pressure you to be loud, but the most respected voices are often the ones that choose their words with precision or don't speak at all. Use silence to create space for clarity. Use it to build emotional discipline. Use it to shape your presence. Because once you master the art of saying less, your actions start to echo louder than any words ever could.